What's up, guys? Thank you, everyone, for helping me reach 100 subscribers. That's awesome. I'm really happy about that. Fortunately, I caught a cold, so that's why I haven't been posting recently. I'm still recovering from it, so I apologize if I sound a bit croaky and congested more than usual. But, anyways, Extroverted Intuition in the first slot for the ENTPs and the ENFPs. Some keywords, some really important ones that I want to cover are big picture and pattern recognition, because more often than not you'll hear these two keywords be attributed to NI, and I used to be one of those people that thought like that. As time went on, the more experience and interaction I've had with NE and observing NE DOMs and all that, I came to the conclusion that both of these keywords just deal with intuition in the general sense as a main Jungian function. Both NI and NE use big picture and pattern recognition. They have totally different ways of reaching their conclusions, but they're both right-brained, conceptual thinking in that regard. As far as NE specifically, it's a mode of attention that really likes dealing with innovation, with exploring novelty and new things. NE really likes to consider all the different possibilities and perspectives of looking at something conceptually. NE is also good at spontaneity and improvisation. And these two terms are a bit loaded, they're a bit general, so I want to clarify and make sure that with NE specifically, it's more on the mental, conceptual realm, because both spontaneity and improvisation can also be related to SE. SE and NE are both similar in that way. They both like interacting with others, with external objects, with the environment. That's how they can get energized, but SE is going to be more on the physical. Both of these functions are like very good at freestyling, for example. And then finally, the last one for NE would be ideation, the ability to generate new ideas, to connect new ideas at a very fast rate, and to always do so through an objective lens, because after all, it is an extroverted function. All right, so regarding this axis with NE in the first slot, SI in the fourth slot, a good example would be like to take NE as dealing with ideas, with conceptualization, generating lots of new ideas, different possibilities, whereas SI, like I mentioned previously in my introverted sensing video, it likes to deal with body, time, memory, the preservation of knowledge of tangible experiences of the past, routine, all these things. This axis of the first and the fourth is sort of like a conflict of where NE is the soul and SI is the body. And the soul wants to be free and expressive, and it wants to explore, whereas the body, it's kind of like stuck in the physical realm, physical reality, and NE feels sort of confined by that. So what can happen is SI gets turned off so that NE can, do its thing more purely, so to speak, that ideation, that conceptualization of different possibilities. And what can happen is that if SI gets turned off for too long, NE DOMs, they can sort of ramble when they're talking to you, like go off on a lot of tangents to the point that they become forgetful of what they were even talking about in the first place. And it's kind of like, well, what was I talking about again? Stuff like that. Another one would be like a young NE DOM that's still maturing. Let's say that they are exploring the internet and they've come across a new discovery and they have 50 tabs open on their internet browser and they're researching, and then their mom calls them for dinner and they say that they're not hungry because they want to keep exploring despite the fact that they haven't eaten anything the whole day, and they're completely unaware of that fact. So they can be, when you're totally in NE mode, it's kind of like a small out of body experience, in a way, from what I understand, from what I've observed from NE DOMs. Probably the best example that I like to use for this axis would be Lewis Carroll's work, Alice in Wonderland. It's a phenomenal book. The Disney movie was great. I highly recommend rewatching it with this axis in mind, and you'll make connections to NE and SI. NE is kind of like when Alice goes down the rabbit hole for the first time, and she's sort of floating, drifting down, and as she's going down, these different external objects go up, like a grandfather clock passes her, and then a table with a teacup, and it's sort of a representative of different ideas and concepts that are like kind of in a whirlwind around the NEDOM's head when they're thinking of all the different possibilities of a way to look at something, at different perspectives of something. A reoccurring theme in that work is Alice. She's constantly going through spurts of growth and then shrinking. Her body is fluctuating throughout that story, right? All of these things that SI represents become distorted in Wonderland. So again, this is like NE in the first, SI in the fourth, and the sort of conflict that can occur. One last one is if we take the concept of a birthday, a certain date that you were born in a location. It's a piece of tangible information, a past experience. It can be related to SI. It's something that can be, it's a bit traditional in the sense that it's celebrated once a year. Whereas NE is like, okay, SI, you can have that one birthday. I'm going to have my 364 birthdays. In that sense, NE wants to look at all the different possibilities. It doesn't want to be confined to just one thing. Again, there's so many different examples that can be extracted just from that work. So I highly recommend checking it out, especially if you've never read the book or watched the movie before. Okay, so moving on here, I like to look at this NE-SI process as kind of like, say we have an external object here, and this can be anything from a new person, it can be a new experience, it can be something someone says, a new idea, or even literally an external object in an environment, like a physical thing. And this is kind of what NE-DOMs like to seek out, because what can happen is this phenomenon or sensation of the pop can happen, and once this happens, it sort of shoots out a bunch of previously existing concepts, ideas, experiences that the NE-DOM has gone through in the past. And of course, it's important to remember that these experiences and ideas are completely objective, and they're mostly generated by what SI has stored for NE to work with, what has been done or experienced in the past. And this popping sensation, it's kind of like lighting a sparkler and then watching it shoot off in random directions in slow motion. And all these ideas, all these dots, NE can go through the process of connecting them, finding patterns, finding connections, and once that has been established, it can go to the next step where it's kind of like a what-if zone. But the thing is, it can only go there if a pattern has been established. If not, it needs to seek out more of these dots, right? These ideas, experiences, which is why it's so important for NE to work alongside SI, because SI can store them and just give NE more to work with. And this both of these things together, when this process happens, I like to think of it as a kind of conceptual reasoning or conceptual blending. And because this is really where the novelty and the creativity, the innovation, the improvisation, this is where it can happen if these patterns have been recognized, and these new possibilities emerged, and ideas can sort of merge together and form a new concept. This process, especially for when Any's in the first slot, it can come off as a bit loony, a bit wacky, a bit bonkers for a lot of people, because Any Doms can say just the most random things sometimes. Like, I've heard socks are kind of like underwear for your feet, or bats are nothing but flying little bears. Just the most random, hilariously ridiculous stuff. But this is like them discovering new things, and this is how they learn and explore the world conceptually. And what else can happen is that if it goes here, Any can find loopholes, it can find soft spots, weak points in someone's argument, in someone's system, in the way that they are wording their sentences. This is why Any is so valuable in debate. It really thrives there. And remember, it's an extroverted function that deals with perception, so it's only going to offer the Enneadom new possibilities, new perspectives, and it really depends on the individual and what they do with those perspectives and how they use them, because of course you can use them to help someone, or you can use them to take advantage of someone. So this is just something that Any can do. All right, so just a couple more things to wrap this up. Any, it's a function that really likes chaos. It can really thrive there. It almost finds comfort in chaos, whereas SI is more, it likes balance, stability, homeostasis. Any is more chaotic, sporadic, random, RNG, because through chaos come different opportunities, different ways to improvise, to innovate, and it can almost cause this mentality in any Dom stuff, kind of out with the old, in with the new, like always want to evolve, to move forward. And for example, like a lot of Any Doms are into stock markets and trading, because that's an area that is constantly evolving. You always have to be on your toes and pay attention to what's happening in the market. And Any can really look at all that external data, all those external objects, and spot patterns, connections, trends, and they're usually able to trade, buy, sell very effectively. Another example of Any that I'd like to conclude on is in IQ tests. There's usually a section that looks something like this. You have these different shapes, and then that this leads to that leads to this, and then what's the outcome. Any is very good at this because it's objective data, and it can just quickly conceptualize the different possibilities. So it'll be like, okay, this leads to this very fast. It's just the same process as this. This pattern recognition occurs extremely fast. Obviously, when I'm drawing this stuff, I have to do it a bit slower in order to explain it. But yeah, Any Doms, they're very quick, very witty, and yeah, that's all I want to say for now. I hope you've enjoyed these examples and it's helped you understand extroverted intuition a bit better. And if you liked this video, make sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching.